Hey guys, thanks so much for joining in today. We'll just give people a couple more minutes to kind of join in before kicking it off. All right, I think we can get started. Today we have Marco from Oasis Protocol joining us. Welcome, Marco. So great to have you on.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for having us.
Let's start with introduction. So, Marco, would love to get a quick introduction on you, what you're doing, and your background.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm Marco. I'm head of AI at Oasis. And previously, I mingled around in the decentralized identity space, which was tons of fun, but also very compliance heavy. So that's where I got a bit tired. And even before that, many years ago, I actually started my career in venture capital, which was a very privileged position. I stayed there for a couple of years, but also at the end, it was very hands off. You just do lots of DD, then you invest, then you get like board observer seats, but you don't really do too much to impact the startups. That's why I then switched into something more hands on. And now, since April, I joined Oasis, and I'm really happy here.
Amazing. Yeah, I know what you mean. Personally, also, I started my career in venture capital, so I know what you mean about just feeling like you're kind of hands off on the sidelines instead of, part of the action. So that's why I joined Aether as well. So we'd love to learn a little bit more about Oasis Protocol. What are you guys building?
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, I totally feel you on the VC side. But it is a very privileged one. Everyone wants to talk to you. That's very different once you join a startup because suddenly you have something to sell, you have some more interest, and the benefit you bring to other projects isn't that apparent as with a VC where it's just, hey, they could give me money. So yeah, about Oasis, we've built our own L1. It's privacy focused. And we did it a bit differently than others. We separated compute from consensus layer. And one of the compute layers that we have is a confidential EVM. It's called Sapphire. And privacy in our case comes from trusted execution environments, TEs. So recently, there's been lots of talk about it. In the past, it was not very well seen in the space because TEs do have hardware dependency. I mean, that's the whole logic. You have a hardware. This hardware can attest that the compute was correct, and you can have privacy. But you do depend on some hardware providers. In our case, it's Intel SGX. So all of our nodes that run this confidential EVM, they run Intel SGX CPUs, and that's where the compute happens. We are the only confidential EVM in production, and we've been in production for more than a year. Others are attempting to do the same with like ZK. There's a couple of projects working on FHEs, but Oasis decided on TEs, at least for now, because it's very practical. And if anyone wants to use on-chain confidentiality, there really isn't a way around us. And that's why we have a confidential DEX. We're working on confidential NFTs, voting, etc. And specifically in the AI space, we also have quite a few use cases that are unique, like Ocean Protocol, for example. I think most projects here, they do know them. And most listeners, they have built an AI-based prediction platform natively on our chain because they wanted to have all the data streams fully on-chain, and then only if someone pays for the data stream, they can actually see the data. So this whole monetization aspect on-chain would not be possible if everything that is on-chain is actually visible to everybody. So that's why they decided to use Oasis, and they are actually really happy with it and expanding quite a bit. Other use cases, for example, are private keys of agents. So everyone these days is building on-chain agents that are powered by off-chain intelligence, aka AI. And those agents, they need private keys if they want to have or want to do anything on-chain, because they need to sign messages. And for this, most projects that I've talked to, they actually have some off-chain method of storing these private keys, or it's like local storage, local host. And this is not very secure. Someone needs to be the custodian of those keys. And that's where we come in and tell them like, hey, we have a confidential chain. You can have this on chain. And then you can have like way more logic around these private keys, like who gets access, when do they get access. You can turn off agents really well. And just no one needs to have the responsibility of owning those keys. And then the last one is actually a big one. So lots of projects are talking on how to verify the off-chain compute. So there's like zkML, optimistic machine learning, and we are kind of pioneering TEML. And lots of the other TE projects, we're definitely not the only one, they are also working on this. And this means expanding the TEs from SGX, what I mentioned in the beginning, to Intel TDX, because TDX can build a secure enclave with, for example, an NVIDIA H100. And then you suddenly have like very powerful TEs that could replicate, or kind of that could provide compute for the whole machine learning world. And this really unlocks some new use cases that are not possible currently. We are currently still researching this, but are quite excited about what this will bring to the AI space.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, before kind of moving forward, I feel like a lot of our audience sometimes that comes on these spaces, they aren't that crypto native, so they're more like crypto curious kind of people. So we'd love to kind of learn a little bit more about the difference between confidential EVM and ZK EVM.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I forgot you have a quite broad audience and lots of like also gaming people that don't really care about
Yeah.
the blockchain, and that's how it should be. Like you just come for an application, you want to use the application. Why do I care on which cloud this is built or what kind of stack they're utilizing? I just want to have the experience from a
Correct.
user
Yeah.
perspective. So sure. So confidential EVM means in our case you have smart privacy on chain. So the big nature of blockchains was always, hey, it's fully transparent, it's very auditable, it's very provable that all the transactions that happened were correct. So this transparency was seen as a feature. But many realized, hey, it could also be a bug, because if I have everything on chain always public to everybody, I am quite limited in some use cases. Like we, from the beginning, when I first learned about crypto in like 2017, voting was always a cool use case. Like, hey, we could do elections on chain. I could vote for president. It's very provable that everyone just voted once. But everyone would see what I voted on, because in the metadata, you can actually see the stuff that I did with my vote or with my transaction. So that's where we were like, hey, you need on chain privacy, you need on chain confidentiality. And this is kind of what we mean. If you talk about stuff like ZK EVM, most are using ZK for scaling the EVM world. So you have Ethereum as the layer one, and then you have layer twos that have the job to scale transactions, to kind of have a separate layer where you can group transactions, and then you just kind of post one transaction if you want on the main chain, which is Ethereum. And the ZK EVMs, that's what they do. So they use ZK to scale the EVM, meaning you just post a proof of many transactions on the Ethereum chain, and this way you can kind of have scalability. But this doesn't really bring privacy, right? This is just about scaling and bundling many transactions into one. But what we wanted to do is actually have on-chain privacy. But there are some projects that are actually working on this as well. I am a fan of Aztec. They will be launching their ZK, that's what they call it, double ZK EVM this year, where you also have on-chain privacy. But yeah, ZK is still also in research phase, and we are just very practical in this regard and are like, hey, we have an on-chain privacy focused, or we have a privacy focused chain, and you can use it today if you need it. If you have a use case that can benefit from it, you can do it today. You don't need to wait for some researchers to solve some difficult math problems.
Ah, okay. Now I understand better as well. I think the voting use case is actually really cool because, so I'm personally from a place like India where there's a lot of like rigging with votes and things like that. So I think, having something like a confidential EVM where people can kind of vote on chain, in a secure and private manner, that would actually be super helpful. So it's actually a pretty cool use case. Not sure if we'll ever get there though, because I don't think it's in the policymakers' interests
Yeah, exactly.
to
I mean,
have a fair.
currently we do mainly have Web3 native dApps building on our chain, like
Yeah.
confidential DEX. Like you want to interact with the DeFi space, but I don't want everyone to always see all of my trades. So yeah, those are kind of the use cases that are currently being built, just because crypto is still very nichey and you have these
Mm.
very techie users that just want to have some on-chain privacy. But yeah, the use cases that it actually unlocks are way bigger, as you say. It could change like proper applications in the real world.
Yeah, absolutely. So I feel like, because crypto is still kind of in a growing or like new-ish kind of stage where we're still building out the infrastructure layer. And then obviously on top of that, we'll eventually have applications that people like you and I can use. And then, so I just wanted to understand what your perspective is in this cycle with respect to, privacy infrastructure and how it's evolving.
Right. So, I mean, TEs are also maturing. The sentiment, as I said, is changing a bit towards TEs, being like, hey, we've been waiting for ZK for years, but it's just still complicated. Not that many people can use it. You need someone that's very familiar with it. They still struggle a bit with scalability because the overhead that you have from ZK proofs is not negligible. And that's something that's definitely changing, and it will change even more, I think, this year and the next bull market. But I do think ZK will get closer to it. I mean, I know a couple of projects that are using Cairo hints, for example, to prove some off-chain logic. Um, FAG is the new one on the horizon. Everyone is kind of excited. Lots of ZK people are actually switching to FAG. At least that's what I am seeing. But this is just like a typical crypto developer thing, I feel like, because people like to work on difficult problems, and FHE is the new one, and so that's why they tend to explore it. But again, I am also a fan of what they are doing. Zama is doing great stuff. I know a couple of projects that are actually already utilizing it. The question is always, how scalable is it? Which use cases does it actually benefit the most? But that's where everyone is working together. Like even in the privacy space or the infra space, it doesn't really feel like competition because the pie still is very small, as you also said. Like this is a nascent space. We are all trying to build this into something big with different use cases, with getting more Web2 users on the way. So yeah, lots of work to be done on the privacy side. Lots of people are actually scared to do something here because you always run the risk of having some legal problems, compliance problems. But that's where we, at least from like an infra perspective, have it easy because we just provide all the tools for you to use on-chain privacy. And then the dApps that actually build this into something, they have to kind of consider this a bit more than we do. But we are just kind of the tech experts providing the infra, and then whatever you build on top, that's up to you.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. I think infra is definitely kind of more on the safer side. But obviously that's what we need in this moment, just because I guess how new the space is. And it's actually really interesting because you guys talk a lot about, empowering Web3 with smart privacy. So can you touch a little bit more about on what smart privacy is, what you mean by that?
Yeah, great question. It's actually not that intuitive. So the idea is that with a TE, or at least with our setup, you send encrypted data plus smart contract into this TE. So on a hardware level, then the compute happens and it's verifiable. And you as a developer have the option to choose what comes out of it. And generally projects, they kind of make public sender, receiver, and gas cost of the transaction. And then with the metadata, you can be smart if you want with the data that you present on chain for everyone to see. So, for example, you can kind of have an NFT that lives fully on chain, but some attributes of the NFT are actually private. Like no one can see it, or at least just a few people that you decide can see it. Um, there was a cool use case. Like I think lots of people here will still know Crypto the game. It was like an on-chain Big Brother game. Lots of attention on Twitter, and there you had as part of an NFT that you could buy immutability or something, or like yeah, I think immunity from being voted out if you think in like the Big Brother world. And this data or this attribute was actually stored off chain because they didn't know how to do this on chain because it's actually not possible if you don't have a confidential EVM. And they talked to us too late, or actually they didn't talk to us, but we could have solved it for them. So this is a use case where you can be like very flexible with the privacy that you need. So it's not always just like, hey, everything you do is private, but you as a developer can very flexibly choose what you need to be private and have this adjustable. Like you have it private for now, then you kind of change the rules and suddenly give the decryption key to everybody. And that's what we mean with smart privacy. Like it's not privacy by default, it's rather privacy in a way that you need.
Oh, that's so interesting because I do feel like obviously different applications have different needs for privacy, and to be able to have that flexibility, I think is super important instead of just having like a one size fits all kind of a solution. I do see that we have some requests for questions, so I'll definitely add you guys on as speakers. But before that, I also wanted to ask, like a little bit more about our partnership, how we're working together. So, can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, for sure. So it's on different dimensions. One is definitely just like sharing projects with each other. So you guys are talking to lots of AI and gaming projects. We are talking to projects across the spectrum, but obviously also AI and gaming. And for us, it was very important, like from an infra blockchain perspective, to have really strong partners that can benefit our ecosystem. So if an AI project comes to me and is like, hey, I really need on-chain privacy, I want to build something on Oasis. I'm like, yeah, of course, that's where we will support you. But we also do have a partner like Aethir, and they can help you with, for example, GPU credits or GPU compute in general. Because most AI projects that I talk to, they do need it and will need it. And same with gaming. So it's just about like having this really tight connection with a provider that can help our ecosystem. And the second one is actually something that I mentioned in the beginning, where we are expanding our kind of compute provisioning from Intel SGX into also having Intel TDX plus NVIDIA H100s. And H100s is obviously kind of the flagship product that Aethir can help us. So we're looking at implementing confidential compute for GPUs as well. And that's, as I said, a very research heavy topic. So that's where we are also collaborating and exploring how do we get best access to some H100s for testing purposes. So it's actually, we will also very likely be a client of Aethir for a couple of H100 instances so that we can just figure out how to best utilize confidential compute on a GPU and then connect it back to our privacy blockchain.
Yeah, no, it is definitely very exciting for us also. And I know you particularly lean quite, into the AI space. So I would also, just because you mentioned, that you talk to AI companies a lot, and would love to learn a little bit more about what you're seeing out there within the AI space. What's exciting? What's any cool new use cases for us?
Definitely. I mean, I think the use cases where you can actually use something as a user, that's a bit away. But there are some really cool projects. Like, for example, I'm quite close with the Magnet AI team, and they will be releasing very soon like an on-chain agent where you can, with natural language, so you just write out, hey, I want to swap my Bitcoin to Ethereum, and they will provide like an agent that helps you with this transaction. So kind of also assisting in this intense space that we are really struggling with in crypto, because it's very complex. I need to use bridges, and then I need to swap something, and it's super easy to do something wrong. So that's why they are jumping in. But in general, I think there's lots of decentralized compute providers, as you know. There's lots of like agent projects. Lots of people actually working on data provisioning. How do I best incentivize users to share their very personal and very private data with me, so that I can utilize this for some, I don't know, some very custom agent that they can then utilize across the board. Like, for example, in gaming, an NPC could be trained on the chat with your personal Telegram or WhatsApp chat with all of your friends, and then suddenly those NPCs kind of interact with you as your friends would do. But first, you need to kind of incentivize users to share this data, and then you fine tune models on this data to kind of be a custom agent. So yeah, there's lots of work being done in this. I would just say wait a bit more for like proper on-chain agents. We are supporting one team very heavily on this. They're called OMO, and they are building agents that kind of will help with yield-bearing strategies. Like, lots of people in crypto were paid in USDC, and I just want to deploy this USDC to bring me some stable yield. But I don't want to go to Aave or Coinbase and check like who brings me the best yield. Do I get any points somewhere? So I just want this automated, and that's what lots of people are actually currently looking and waiting for. And I do know a couple of projects that are kind of, I don't know, let's say a couple of months away to make this available to the public. And those will be some really cool use cases. Like, agents will help us in general a lot in the crypto space, because the easiest way to think of agents is just automation tools. Like, we have tons of automation tools in our daily life or in business life with stuff like, for example, Zapier. I utilize it a lot to like connect different apps and then have automations running there. If something happens here, then do this, etc. And the same will be possible with on-chain agents. And it should make the UX very clean, or at least like way cleaner than it currently is, because that's still, at least in my opinion, and I think most would agree, one of the big reasons why we don't have more adoption. It's just very complex, too many options for users. And if I could just automate all of this onboarding or complexity away, then we will benefit quite a bit as an ecosystem.
Yeah, no, agreed. I think on-chain agents, especially, it's going to be so many exciting kind of use cases with that. Also, a little bit scary, to be honest. I don't know what you think about that, with the on-chain agents kind of coming in. Do you feel like, are there any negative impacts to that?
Why do you think it's scary?
I don't know. I just feel like, because I know they're training like data centers of like on-chain agents and things like that. So it's potentially we could have more on-chain agents than human beings at some point.
Yeah,
So
I mean, I think AI is scary. I think on-chain agents, they don't even will utilize really AI or LLMs, just because if I have an agent that kind of can or has access to my funds and that can move away my salary that I get from Oasis, I don't want it today to utilize an LLM. Like, they still hallucinate quite a bit. There's zero alignment proof. There's not much explainability on how an AI derived the result that they kind of provided. So what most agent projects will be doing is like hard coding the logic. Hey, go somewhere, then check via different oracles the correct price, the correct yield, and kind of build this logic very manually. So it will be on-chain agents, but I don't think they will be smart. So until we get these smart ones, I'm not very afraid of them. But yeah, I think AI in general is very scary. I'd love to see a bit more work, or quite a bit more work, on AI alignment, and very few people actually doing so, because racing to AGI is just way more fun.
Yeah, for sure. I think I know there's this guy who's working quite uh heavily into AI alignment. And I know for the longest time, his name is slipping my mind, but for the longest time, Sam Altman's bio said fanboy of who that person was. I don't know if you know who I'm talking about.
I lost you for a second. Yeah, I think very likely it's going to be Eliezer.
Oh yeah, it was him. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he
it's
does most
crazy.
of the work for this. I mean, I'm a big fan. I read lots of his like rationality stuff, but it has become also memeable because many people just don't take it serious anymore. Because whenever you launch a big AGI related project, he always asks you like, "Hey, what's your alignment plan? How do you want to get to AI alignment?" So he's kind of a broken disc in a sense because he just keeps repeating the same topic, but he does repeat it for a very good reason because it's not solved, it's often not even addressed. AI safety teams within an AI company are generally very small. So the focus definitely is not there, and I would also agree with him that I want to see it more.
So, would you say you lean more towards the doomer side of the spectrum?
Um, Generally, or currently, I say my PDoom is around like 20%. And
Okay,
for
that's
the
not
listeners
too
that
bad.
don't know, this is just about like the percentage that I think AI could lead to our doom, kind of
Hmm.
maybe not the end of humanity. It doesn't really mean that we will be destroyed by AI, but just like that we will lose relevance. Because to be fair, like AGI is per se just like, hey, it's intelligence on our level. But once you get to an AGI level, it's very easy to duplicate this AGI into like millions or hundreds of millions of agents. And then those will compete with companies because I mean, I'm sitting on my laptop, I just have access to the internet, and AGI will have the same. So it can be doing the same stuff that I am doing, but just like 24/7 and in the millions of kind of duplicates or replicas of myself. And then it becomes a bit scary on like, hey, how can they manipulate us? What can they actually achieve? Will they be the ones that kind of bring innovation forward? And then especially if we talk about stuff like ASI, artificial
Hmm.
superintelligence, I mean, this is actually a new intelligence that we're bringing to this planet, and it seems like the next step in evolution, and that's definitely scary. But I mean, as I said, my PDM is around 20%. I'm still quite optimistic that we can do it. I just want to see a bit more effort on the alignment side.
Yeah, no, agreed. I think personally, for me, I my sweet spot where I would want AI to reach is that obviously this is all just what I would want. It's to reach, the stage where there's so much productivity that actually we don't even have to work. So I'm okay with being irrelevant as long as there's so much productivity that there's so much money, everyone has universal basic income just because AI is working so hard. Um,
Yeah, that's the big vision of people like Sam Altman. Like,
yeah.
no need for us to work anymore. AI will make everything super efficient. This way, everything will be very cheap. There will be a new Moore's law. Instead of like doubling compute power, we will double or kind of, yeah, reduce in half every 2 years, let's say,
Mm.
the costs of everything because AI just makes everything super efficient. So everything can become very cheap. And you don't even need that much basic income for you to be able to have access to everything. But it is a very, very optimistic view. And
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not sure if I agree.
Okay, interesting. But yeah, so now we can take questions from the community. So if anyone has any questions to do with Oasis or AI or I don't know, the Duma argument, you guys can request to come up on stage and I'll add you. And Marco, do you have any exciting upcoming developments with Oasis that you can share with us in the meantime?
Yeah, for sure. And happy to take any questions. I mean, it is supposed to be an AMA. We are working very heavily on this TEML part that I mentioned. So I'm talking to lots of projects that can help us here. And just our team and the Oasis Labs team, they are working quite a bit on exploring this, how to have confidential compute with H100s, how to combine it with Intel TDX CPUs, and then how to kind of make this available to our network via the remote attestation logic that we already have built. And I'm really excited about any agent projects that are coming live. Like I mentioned a couple, there's more in the pipeline, and I just want to see someone utilize our EVM as it was intended, like on-chain privacy for some use cases that you cannot solve anywhere else.
Amazing. Yeah, super exciting. Looking forward to seeing what happens and how you guys kind of grow in the coming few months and years. So far we haven't gotten any questions, so maybe just one last call for questions if anyone has, or we could just wrap it up here.
Yeah, works for me. I mean, this was tons of fun. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, thanks so much for hopping on. It was lovely to have you. And to everyone who came in and joined our spaces and listened in, thanks so much for your time. We do these spaces weekly, so we'll catch you guys all next time. And thanks again, Marco.
Nice. Thank you. See you soon. Bye bye.
Bye. Bye.